Longtime UFO researcher and Huffington Post journalist Lee Speigel joins us to talk about space robots and the search for extraterrestrial life. That plus the latest space and UFO news right now on Spacing Out. Greetings everyone and welcome to another episode of Spacing Out. I'm Jason McClellan.
And I'm Maureen Ellsbury.
Today's episode is brought to you by Open Minds Magazine, a high-quality print magazine focused on UFOs and extraterrestrial life. The June-July issue just hit newsstands and its theme is Ancient Aliens. Look for it in your local Barnes & Noble, Walgreens, or online at openminds.tv.
We'll talk with Lee Speigel about space robots soon, but first it's time for UFO news. The Federal Aviation Administration is still looking into a mysterious UFO that nearly collided with an aircraft over Denver, Colorado on the evening of Monday, May 14th.
According to KUSA 9 News, the NBC affiliate in Denver, a pilot flying a Cessna Citation 525 CJ-1 corporate jet approximately 8,000 feet above the Denver neighborhood of Cherry Creek radioed the control tower to report that something looking like, quote, a large remote-controlled aircraft flew past his plane in the opposite direction. 9 News reported that, quote, as far as investigators know, the mysterious object did not show up on radar.
Investigators are extremely concerned about this UFO because it poses a severe risk to planes in the sky. Greg Feith, aviation analyst for 9 News, suggests the UFO could have been a military drone, a remote-controlled airplane, or a large bird. But those are just guesses. For now, the object remains unidentified.
And the investigation into this story is interesting. The FAA is still looking into it. They came back after reviewing their data and saw that nothing appeared on radar. They reviewed the tapes, and the local sheriff's department, I'm kind of surprised at. They actually suggest that what the pilot could have seen was a weather balloon.
Right, and you know, I think they're just dropping it after this. They can't find a reasonable explanation, so they're giving up.
I think so. I think they're done. They suggested the weather balloon because they did see, somebody did locate a weather balloon, a downed weather balloon in the area, so they threw that out as a possible explanation. But this pilot specifically described something as looking like a model airplane,
right.
So that doesn't seem to fit with a weather balloon.
Somebody's probably hiding that went into the airspace that would get into big trouble with a...
Oh yeah, because weather balloons, when they're launched, they do have to register their flight plan and everything with the FAA. So it could have been a unregistered launch of a weather balloon, but still, it was probably a remote-controlled plane or something,
right.
Because that's what the pilot described.
Exactly. Men in Black star Will Smith revealed in an interview with BBC Radio 1 on Wednesday, May 16th, that his son Jaden confronted U.S. President Barack Obama about the presence of extraterrestrials on Earth.
During the interview with BBC Radio 1 host Chris Moyles, Smith told a story about his family visiting the White House in April of this year. He explained, I was at the White House with my family, and we were getting our tour, and, you know, Barack and Michelle and Sasha and Malia, and it's me, Jada, and the kids, and we're walking through the White House, and the night before, Jaden had said to me, Dad, I got to ask the president about the aliens. I was like, dude, no, it's not cool. It's not cool. It's embarrassing. Don't ask the president.
But the persistent Jaden was determined to bring up the topic with the president. Smith explained that upon arriving in the Situation Room, Jaden got that look in his eyes, leaned over to his father and asked, Dad, what's my punishment? Smith again forbade his son from asking the president about aliens, but the defiant Jaden had already made up his mind.
Smith explained to Moyles that Jaden interrupted Obama, saying, excuse me, Mr. President? Smith jumped in, attempting to deflect his son's question, but before he could, the president said, don't tell me, the aliens, right? Okay, I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of extraterrestrials, but I can tell you that if there had been a top secret meeting, and if there would have been a discussion about it, it would have taken place in this room.
Jaden was apparently thrilled by the president's response, taking it as confirmation of the existence of extraterrestrials. Moyles suggested to Smith that he should look into the issue of extraterrestrials, but Smith jokingly responded, I know, I already have the top secret information. I just can't share it. You don't think I've made all these movies and not been briefed by the White House?
Some are taking the president's response, which really doesn't offer anything but a simple hypothetical situation, as evidence of the government's UFO cover-up. though it is likely his response to Jaden was simply meant to entertain a 13-year-old and his family. Well, on the topic of Will Smith, we actually just saw an advanced screening of Men in Black 3.
Yeah, we went on Monday, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was actually pretty good. But it's, you know, go in expecting the really sort of stereotypical cheesy alien stuff, and I think you'll like it.
Yeah, it's very similar to Men in Black 1 and Men in Black 2, as you would expect. I didn't think it was as good as Men in Black 1 or Men in Black 2, but it's still it's a fun movie, and it has a surprise twist at the end that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, and it made Jason cry.
What?
So just be prepared for that. There is, despite all the humor, there's a little sentimental aspect to the film as well. But I recommend checking it out if you're into that kind of humor, so to speak.
I did cry.
He did. Retired Army Colonel John Alexander is calling on 3 of the highest-ranking military and intelligence officials in the Obama administration to grant amnesty to anyone in the military who has been previously sworn to secrecy about UFOs.
According to a Huffington Post article by Lee Speigel, Alexander publicly announced his amnesty request to the government during his presentation on May 17th at the National Atomic Testing Museum in Las Vegas, Nevada. According to Speigel, the museum's CEO and executive director, Alan Palmer, supports the idea. Palmer, a highly decorated former Air Force and Navy combat jet fighter, told Speigel, quote, "I have known people who've seen things they couldn't explain and were very reluctant to talk to anybody about it."
Alexander is a former military insider with a top-secret clearance, and he commanded Special Forces A teams in Vietnam and Thailand in the 1960s. He contends that some UFOs are real and of unknown origin, and that approximately 5% of all sightings remain unexplained.
In space news this week, space history was made on Tuesday, May 22nd. SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket successfully launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida at 3:44 a.m. Eastern Time. The launch was supposed to take place 3 days earlier, but a faulty valve led to an aborted launch.
SpaceX's latest launch marks the 3rd launch of the Falcon 9 rocket, the 2nd flight of the Dragon capsule, and a history-making first flight for a commercial spacecraft to the International Space Station.
After 3 days in space, the Dragon capsule will maneuver towards the ISS and then will be brought in by the station's robotic arm at the end of day 4. And because you're actually watching this or listening to this in the future, the successful docking will hopefully have already taken place.
The United States Rocket Academy's project Citizens in Space is seeking entries for a science project that will attempt to collect microbes that could exist in Earth's upper atmosphere at the edge of space.
This science project, named the High Altitude Astrobiology Challenge, was announced on Saturday, May 19th, and gives participating citizen scientists the opportunity to win up to $10,000. Citizens in Space project manager Edward Wright explains that this project, inspired by a NASA astrobiologist, is asking citizen scientists to develop hardware for collecting high-altitude microorganisms. Approximately 100 of these collection devices will be selected and flown aboard a low-cost orbital spacecraft, like the X-Core Lynx.
According to Universe Today, X-Core Aerospace is a private California-based company that has developed the Lynx, a reusable launch vehicle that has suborbital flight capabilities. Citizens in Space currently has a contract with X-Core Aerospace for 10 suborbital space flights. The winning microorganism collection device from the High Altitude Astrobiology Challenge will fly on all 10 flights.
Officials at the SETI Institute in Mountain View, California, announced on Tuesday, May 22nd, that Jill Tarter, the director of the Center for SETI Research, is retiring. And SETI, of course, stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Tarter, who has reportedly served as the inspiration for Jodie Foster's character Ellie Arroway in the novel and movie Contact, has spent over 35 years scanning the skies for extraterrestrial radio signals. And although she is stepping down from her current position, Space.com explains that Tarter is going to become a full-time fundraiser for the SETI Institute. Full-time fundraising hardly sounds like retirement, and she admits that she does not particularly enjoy fundraising. But with the Institute's need to raise $2 million every year to continue operating, Tarter feels that fundraising is crucial to SETI's survival.
SETI efforts have been fortunate lately to receive wide positive media coverage. The Institute's involvement with researching new planets recently discovered by NASA's Kepler Space Telescope have garnered attention for SETI. As Tarter explained to Space.com, quote, "The Kepler worlds are really legitimizing SETI. all of us that are even peripherally involved with that are looking and saying, you know, Earth 2.0, that's just right around the corner. We can almost taste it.
The SETI Institute will recognize and celebrate Tardu's career on June 23rd during a gala event at the SETICon 2 conference in Santa Clara, California at the Santa Clara Hyatt. More information is available at SETICon.com.
Now let's talk with Huffington Post journalist Lee Speigel.
Lee, thanks so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you on the show.
Hi, Jason and Maureen.
Hi.
Well, Lee, we want to talk with you today about robots in space, something that's a very exciting idea, and specifically using robots or exobots to search for extraterrestrial life. And I happen to know that you recently wrote an article about this subject.
I did.
And what did you have to share with the world about robots in space?
Well, it's the most practical thing that we can do if we want to continue to go into space, because it's just too expensive to send humans. It's far better to build robots, and what they're referring to as self-replicating robots, which essentially means robots that can replicate themselves. And one of the people who I spoke to is a Penn State University professor of electrical engineering, a man named John Matthews. And he's basically saying that, look, after 50 years of the SETI Institute trying to find a signal from outer space, and they've come up with nothing, let's try a different tact. Let's do something that won't be very expensive, like sending robots out into the asteroid belt, first of all, where they can kind of, hang out and search for signals coming at them with no possibility of injury to them. And if there is any kind of danger, like incoming meteorites, well, they can just fix themselves and just send whatever signals by using a very narrow laser beam method of communication. They can communicate with each other. And for those of us left behind on Earth who wish that we were out there with them.
Right, and didn't he say on these narrow laser beams that if actual ET was communicating in this fashion, that we probably wouldn't be able to see it as well?
Exactly. I mean, what Matthews is suggesting is that for too long, we here on Earth have been giving potential ET civilizations this like godlike stature. And that they're probably no further along spiritually than we are, and that they're probably also sending robots to where we are here on Earth. And so they could be doing the same thing. They could have the same problems where they're coming from. They may have expenses to deal with on their own. And you get people like Seth Shostak, for example, who's the senior astronomer of the SETI Institute, and he says that yes, robots can help, but rather than having a robot hitch a ride onto one of our spacecraft and then somehow make its way to the asteroid belt is not the same way as us using radio astronomy telescopes to try and find a signal. Seth thinks we're going to find the signal within the next 10 years. But don't ever mention the word UFOs to people at the SETI Institute.
Well, let's hope it's 10 years, but like you said, they've been waiting 50, so I think patience are running out. Robots are definitely a good way to cut down on the cost of exploration. That's true. In fact, last year NASA sent the first robot. He actually took a ride on board one of the final space shuttle missions to the International Space Station. His name is Robonaut 2. R2.
Robonaut 2, yeah. And he has no legs. Most of the pictures you see of him it's just like you see with me. You're only seeing me from like the neck up, and like I have no legs either. And but for the robot, he was created to be helpful to the astronauts on board the space station, and he has hands with fingers, and he can do a specific number of tasks, and they're expecting to make a whole population of these kinds of robots as the first step.
That's kind of creepy, thinking about a whole army of these robots.
It does seem like an inhuman thing to do, or creepy. And so many movies have been made out of the whole idea of robots being built by us and then taking over, and then we're done.
Well,
Right?
I have read though that they are testing the legs and other portions of the robot's body, so we'll
Right.
eventually see that.
Well, it's a good way to have it's a way that we can explore the local galactic neighborhood
Right.
by sending instead of just sending these unmanned probes like the Vikings and other spacecraft that we've already sent past Jupiter and Saturn, and we've got I think it's the Curiosity spacecraft that will soon be landing on Mars. That's great, but we need something that can substitute for humans, and robots are the logical next step, as long as they follow orders and behave themselves.
Well, we certainly hope that happens. Um, I know Neil deGrasse Tyson recently said that he's not worried about robots in space because they're not going to turn on us. There isn't going to be a Skynet like Terminator 2 because they're not robots that look like we look like. The Hubble Space Telescope is a robot, and we program codes and tell it what to do, and it sends us information. Our smartphones are there. We punch buttons. We have the information. That's his response. He doesn't think that robots are going to turn on us. But the privatization of space is interesting, and you have companies now like SpaceX, and their CEO, Elon Musk, is trying to reduce the cost of space exploration. And he claims that when things pan out and move forward with the future of SpaceX, that he'll be able to offer trips to Mars for $500,000. We'll see if that happens. But for now, the robots seem much more reasonable.
The problem with all of that, to my way of thinking, is, oh, gee, $500,000 to Mars. Well, how soon is that going to happen that I could possibly stand in line for a trip like that? It's not going to happen. People aren't ready to go to Mars. It's too expensive. It's not practical. And it is a pipe dream. We need to invent warp speed.
It's already been
You know,
invented, Lee. Come on,
or
get with the
hyper,
program.
now, you mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson, the director of the Hayden Planetarium in New York. Well, you know what? He says that there's probably nothing hostile about any kind of space aliens coming here. Well, don't ask that same question of astrophysicist Stephen Hawking.
Right.
Okay? Because 2 years ago, he basically said, yes, the statistics are overwhelmingly in favor that we're not alone, but we shouldn't be trying to make contact with them because basically we're inviting them to come here and take us over. And there's no telling what their intentions might be. He said, look, when the Europeans came to America, it was very, very bad for the Native Americans here.
Right.
And
What a
so,
cynic that guy is.
well, yeah, he's a cynic. Oh, yeah, but he appeared on Big Bang Theory, so he's okay with me.
Pretty hip. What a hip guy. Well, you mentioned the robots that are self-replicating robots.
Right.
And a couple months ago, there was an article mentioning, I believe, the U.S. military is exploring energy-producing bacteria that could possibly be used in space robots. And they produce energy, so they wouldn't need to use fuel. And these would be very small sorts of crafts in space. But the bacteria would produce the energy to give the craft propulsion. I imagine it would be pretty slow, but self-replicating and energy producing, these all sound super sci-fi-ish, but they're actually pretty close to reality right now.
Yeah, and one of the problems there, if it's a problem at all, is where do you get enough of this energy in these bacteria to maintain and to sustain the robots? Because even though they are robots, they're going to need to operate on some kind of power, whether it's a nuclear heart or these bacteria. There has to be a way of sustaining them for a long period of time. I think both Voyager spacecraft that are now beyond our solar system, they're both still operating on very tiny pieces of nuclear material. to keep them operating and to send signals back to us. So we need to come up with anything to sustain, whether it's humans or robots.
Well, recently, the announcement of the company Planetary Resources, the company that plans to mine asteroids.
Right.
One of their objectives is to develop these space gas stations.
Yes, yes.
So that could be an answer too, to give other smaller craft the ability to be in space, refuel at a space gas station, and then move on.
Well, we have to also remember the time element involved here. The idea of hopscotching between one asteroid and another, that's fine. We have the technology. We know how to go into space and how to land on another planetary body. But the time element of how to get there, the mechanics of it, the money that will still be involved to create these craft. We've only just in the last few years figured out how to actually land on an asteroid.
Right.
And in some cases to take a little scooper or a shovel and scoop some dirt or material from it and try and get it back to Earth.
Well, yeah. I know you recently wrote an article also about...
well, how do we know that we're bringing back something that's going to kill us?
Good point.
Good point. So the Science Channel, I believe it was the month of March, did a month-long series called Are We Alone? And focused on various suppositions and just talking about extraterrestrial life in general. And one of the shows they did as part of this series was a show about NASA, called NASA's Unexplained Files. And you wrote an article about that on the Huffington Post. And I caught a little bit of that, but I know their history is full of odd things in space and astronauts seeing things they can't explain in space, things they don't know, and things that they catch on video and photo. And some of these things have been mostly identified, and Mark D'Antonio, the photo analysis for MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, did a great job of explaining some of these things and how photo and video, can fool you and fool the camera too. But do you think, you mentioned at the beginning of our interview that there's a possibility that if extraterrestrial life is out there, they could possibly be sending robots our way. Do you know of anything in these strange NASA stories that could possibly be robots?
What, where there might be a possibility of them sending robots? Well, one of the things about most UFO or credible UFO encounters, and I mean that of that 5 to 6% that have never been easily explained, the characteristics described by eyewitnesses on the ground and airline pilots and military pilots of how these things are able to move so fast and then suddenly stop on a dime, make a quick 90-degree angle turn that as far as we're concerned, no humans could survive those kinds of maneuvers inside a ship like this. And yet, there is a conjecture that a lot of these ships are manned or aliened by I've just created a new verb. Yeah. They are aliened by something of intelligence, and because the only other possibility is that they're robotic. The question is, if they're robotic, who's pulling the strings? If it's a projection of some kind of a hologram, who's running the projector? There are too many unexplained objects that have been seen by too many credible observers that they can't all be ignored. And yet what the Science Channel did on this particular show, they tried by having people like Mark D'Antonio and James Oberg, former rocket scientist, and they had Oberg trying to explain away a variety of sightings, like the sighting from an early Gemini mission with Jim McDivitt and Ed White. And this was a mission where Ed White, who was the first American to do a spacewalk, well, he was sleeping at the time. I mean, not during the spacewalk. He was sleeping during this incident. And McDivitt was looking at the space capsule and saw this thing outside of their spacecraft. He said it looked like a beer can with a pencil sticking out one corner of it. So he grabbed a couple of cameras and he started taking pictures. And he took a bunch of pictures. And he told me in an exclusive interview way back in 1975 that he had seen the pictures that NASA released of the object. He said there wasn't anything in there that they showed me that was of the thing that I photographed. And there are a lot of stories like that. Astronaut Gordon Cooper, also in 1975, when I interviewed him, he gave me an exclusive story about how he was working, before he became an astronaut, he was a flight manager out at Edwards Air Force Base in California. He had a film crew out on one of the dry lake beds there, those dry lake beds where the shuttles used to come in for a landing when they couldn't land in Florida. He had a film crew out there just doing some work, and he got a call. He was on the base, and it was one of his filmmakers, and they said, something just landed here. It's circular, it's got a dome on top, and it just landed on 3 tripod legs. And they said, what do you want us to do about it? And he said, you've got cameras, film it. And they did. And they got several minutes of film, including when the object lifted up very quietly, the legs retracted, and the thing just shot away. The films were brought to Cooper. He saw the films, and then he was ordered to send the films to Washington, where they were never seen again. And they didn't even touch that story on the Science Channel program.
It's not exciting enough.
Well, and I don't know if it wasn't exciting enough, but they couldn't explain it away.
Right. Sounds pretty exciting to me. Yeah.
It would have been basically, Gordon Cooper's word against anybody else.
Right.
And there have been lots of other cases. Story Musgrave, okay? Mm-hmm. Here's a guy who was on many space shuttle missions, and he was featured on this show. And Story would come out and say he's absolutely convinced that we're not alone, and that there are civilizations out there that probably know how to use wormholes and other vices and ways of moving from one system to another, but they're not coming here.
Right.
Well, how can he be so sure? He said he has interviewed and personally spoken to many astronauts, including Jim McDivitt and Gordon Cooper. Well, if he had talked to them, then why doesn't he come out and say that these guys have talked about something that NASA couldn't explain? I don't like the contradiction between the agency and the astronauts themselves. These guys are trained observers. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sent into space. Right. And so they should know that if there's anything outside of their spacecraft that shouldn't be there, they're trained to know how to deal with it.
So
now, yes, go ahead.
Good. I was just going to say, so that's definitely a point. If NASA and other organizations start moving towards more robotic space exploration, that you're not going to get that, human interaction that says, well, I know that that's not normal on Earth. Robots can't speak the way humans can, so to speak.
Yeah, it's like a robot will have basically a hard drive inside it. It will be programmed to expect certain things under certain conditions. And if it sees something or experiences something that it's not been trained for, or it's not part of its hard drive programming, it won't know how to react. Or it will bring back or send back information that won't be easily understood by the humans back on good old Earth. Right. And so that's one of the problems. We need to somehow figure out a way, cost-efficient way, to get humans out there.
All right, so completely 100% just your opinion. What do you think should be the next move for manned space exploration?
Well, there are some people like Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace who says, don't worry about it. I'm going to build my Earth orbit hotels. You can just go into space and enjoy your luxury 2-bedroom with a bathroom hotel in space. That's fine. There is going to be a lot of that, and Bigelow is right at the forefront of that.
Right.
I would like to see us as a species go as far into space as we can. We may not have any choice. Our lives may depend on it because so many astronomers say, look, it's inevitable. Something's going to hit us. Something is going to come from the asteroid belt or a remnant of a comet or something. We can't avoid it. It's going to happen. We don't know exactly when, but right now, we don't have anything in orbit around our planet that's been specifically constructed to protect us from something coming in. We don't have it. We need something like that. They talk about it all the time, but still nobody has put the money into it, unless, of course, they just haven't told us, and we do have something up there, but maybe the missiles are aimed toward the ground at this point to some other country instead of to outer space.
Oh, come on, Lee. We know that you are the they. We know you're a secret agent. You know. You know the answers about our secret weapons.
That's so funny that you say that because in the last few months, I've had so many people actually accuse me of being an agent of disinformation and an actual man in black. Well, see, okay, I'm wearing black.
You are?
In fact, I'm going to be writing a story next week to coincide as a promotion for the Man in Black movie.
Oh, nice.
I'm not a man in black, but it's amazing the people can get so passionate about how they feel about it. I get emails and comments from people who they'll start quoting the Bible, and I'm the wrong person to be quoting biblical scripture to. Well, I mean, I'm not a very religious person, but when you start coming on strong that everything that's happening to us on this planet, everything that's ever happened to us can all be explained in the Bible, then you've got a few screws loose, I believe. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it easy. As Stan Friedman, nuclear physicist, my friend, likes to say, there's nothing supernatural about this thing, about UFOs, possibility that we're being visited. It's not magic. It's not supernatural. All that it is of the 5% of UFOs that can't be explained. These are not gods. All it is a technology, and basically we don't know how to do it. It's just somebody who knows how to do something a little better than we do. That's it. Right. We don't have to get any more mysterious about it or religious about it. It's just someone who knows how to do something a little more efficiently. Right. They can get from planet X to planet Y. If they know how to use, like I said before, wormholes or other special ways of maneuvering around, well, great. They don't have to have problems with dealing with fossil fuels. They know how to get, here from there. But there's nothing mystical about it. They're not the gods. They may not have any more of a clue about the creator, if there is a creator, or how the universe really started, or what was there before the physical universe. They may not have any more of a clue about it than we do.
Absolutely. Lee, those are great points to end on. So we want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. It's always a pleasure, and we will definitely have you on very soon again because there are many things that we have to talk about with you, my friend.
Well, Jason, Marines, always a pleasure to see you.
All right, Lee, you take care. We'll talk soon.
Thanks
okay, thanks, guys.
On this show, we like to highlight upcoming events we think you'll be interested in, like these. SpaceFest 4 features a prestigious list of astronauts and speakers discussing astronomy, manned exploration, robotic exploration, commercial space, and space history. The event runs May 30th through June 3rd at the Star Pass Resort in Tucson, Arizona. More information can be found at spacefest.info. The 2012 Out of This World San Diego Fair takes place June 8th through July 4th at the Del Mar Fairgrounds in Del Mar, California. The event explores outer space, the wonders of the universe, and our efforts to explore it, as well as the fun and imaginative world of science fiction and visitors from other planets. Find out more at sdfair.com. June 22nd through the 24th, the SETI Institute presents SETICon 2. The event features an impressive lineup of speakers, including diverse and distinguished scientists, astronomers, astronauts, artists, authors, and actors who have made an impact in the world of real and imagined science. Find out more at SETICon.com. More events like these can be found at openminds.tv/events. That's all for this episode of Spacing Out. Remember, you can be a part of the show. Send us your questions, comments, photos, UFO sightings, stories, or most anything else to Mission Control at spacingout.tv, or leave us a voicemail at 480-302-2132. We just might include your submission in a future episode.
Join us again next week for an exciting discussion with space blogger Jason Major about the new space race and the search for extraterrestrial life. Thank you for joining us. We will see you in the future.
A reusable launch vehicle that has suborbital flight capacity. 10 suborbital space flights. That has suborbital flight capabilities. Hold on, let me take a drink of water. Orbital. Orbital. 10 suborbital.
Yes, orbital.
Orbital. Suborbital. Okay, we're gonna have to do that again.